Okay, so let's recap for starters, because last time we hit a brick wall, in my opinion, and but this section, that in my version, this section starts from Tzadik Vav 96 and goes to 120, let's say 120. Right, begins with the description of Ra, of evil. Okay, Ra. Why does it begin with a description of evil? Because he tells us that the essence of avoida is the removal of evil from first from within yourself, then from the rest of the world. Correct? Okay, good. So then he says, so now he wants to tell us what exactly is evil and what's the mechanics, what's the architecture that allows for the removal of evil, right? Okay. Then he tells us that evil, I think this is the important point to connect it to later, evil, Ra, is the antithesis of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, right? It's such a novel creation. It is the absolute, as much as possible, the antithesis of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. And that's why, so to speak, there's another aspect of why Hashem created it, because it's an expression of His Kol Yochel, right? His omni ability to do anything He wants, even to create something that is almost, His opposite, so to speak, right? Right? Why is that important? Because then he explains, then he throws in, okay, that's an idea. Then he throws in this concept of hashpah, right? Right? So why does he tell us about hashpah? Why is it specifically over here he discusses hashpah? Because the way now I'm understanding hashpah is almost like an expression. It's an emanation, right? The way we translate hashpah, it's an emanation of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. Again, sometimes they translate as influence, but I think the key word is emanation. In other words, it's as if it's coming from Hashem, right? When Hashem, the Medrash says, when Hashem infused a man with a neshama, right? He breathed the neshama into his midilei, right? From within himself, right? So in other words, and that's symbolic of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hashpah in the world, right? So everything that Hashem does is an emanation from Him, okay? Then he tells us that, then he asks the neshama, so how do you, we see that there is good and evil, so how do you think that happens? Oh, so good, hashpah, good comes from hashpah of good, and evil comes from hashpah of evil. He says, no, that can't be. Why? Because from good, you can't, from Hashem, evil can't come directly from Hashem, right? So one of the difficulties that we had is, at the end of the day, it seems like okay, so it doesn't really come here. Again, we're going to come back to this. He sets up a whole system of how it is able to set up. But I think the answer is, again, because since HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world from, so to speak, from within Himself, it's a hashpah, it's an emanation. So then in Echanami, that by definition, Ra cannot emanate from Hashem, right? Maybe Hashem can, again, if there was such a possibility of Hashem controlling something evil outside us, like we think of Hashem as being outside of the Bria, running the show from on top, so He created something evil, no problem. That maybe He could do. But that's why He had to tell us that that's not how the world works. The world works on a system of hashpah, and hashpah is an emanation from within of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So how could a perfect God emanate Ra, right? That's kind of the idea. Again, even though He just told us that, hey, He's infinite, He could do whatever He wants, right? And evil is an expression of His ultimate again, omni-ability, right? Kol Yochel. So maybe He could do, but in the system that HaKadosh Baruch Hu set up, a hashpah, an emanation from Hashem, was the source of Chaim, right? Cannot emanate Ra, which is death, so to speak, right? Chaim ve'amavis, right? That's the good and evil is life and death. HaKadosh Baruch Hu emanates life. He cannot emanate death, right?
So how do you use the book of Job? Like Satan wants to do whole stuff to him. Hashem said, okay, you can do up to here. You can do up to here. So it's like Satan does on its own, but under control.
Right, so we have to say that everything that happens in the world happens through Hashem's control. The question, everything. But we'll come back to that question. We'll come back to that question. But so now, again, just keeping in mind, so parallel to everything that I've said till now, keeping in mind that we always look at the world in two stages. There's a stage of creation, when Hashem set up the system, and there's Hashem governance. There's a stage of governance when Hashem is running the what's the word? The project, the show, right? The project, right? So now, it's interesting. So the Ramchal over here does not really differentiate between the two aspects. It kind of mushes them all together and does not make a clear distinction. Is he talking about specifically about the creation of evil or about happenings of evil that happen now in the world, right? What else is interesting is that the pasuk, right? So it says Yoitzer. The pasuk that about the creation of evil says Yoitzer or, right? Uvorei choshech, oiser shalom, uvorei ra, right? He creates evil. And again, if you were to ask me, the Ramchal told us, actually, in other words, where would you, again, based on what he just told us, that hashpah is the problem. The way I'm understanding hashpah is the because the world is what is made or run through hashpah. Again, it's very very precise over there when he talks about hashpah. I'm just going to read it. He says, "Tzarech shetedi." This is the beginning of Ois Kuf 100. Tzarech shetedi, you should know, shekol hamishave, anything that. Tell me how they translate by you. Again, this is 100. Omer asechel tzarech shetedi shekol hamishave, that anything that happens, or hamiskayim, or that is maintained, binimtzayis. That's the literal translation. How do they translate in your English?
To come into being or to continue to exist.
Okay, so hamishave is coming into being. In other words, the process of creation.
Yeah.
And hamiskayim binimtzayis means to continue to exist, which I'm not sure if it's providence, governance, or just is still in the level of creation coming into existence. Okay, I'm not sure.
Yeah, back to my simple understanding. So Hashem make other angels, including to Satan. It's one creation, and from that point, Satan took over.
We don't know. Let's leave Satan out of it because we don't know about the creation of Satan.
But the one we created the same levels of angels and everything, all this hierarchy.
Again, even without the angels, we don't need to know about the angels either. No. The point is, in the right now, at least I'm right now in the level of, for something to exist, the concept has to be brought into existence. Right?
Yeah.
So,
got it.
So, right. That's where I am. So how could so? So yeah. Okay. So that's where I am. Okay. So now, yeah. I mean, I'm not exactly that's where I am, but I'm just separating the two parts. There's the concept, and then there is the running of the show.
Yeah.
That's why I'm wondering what's more difficult to understand: Hashem creating the concept of evil, or Hashem maintaining a
continuous existence,
or we were talking governing,
Okay.
the world.
Again, simple for Adam and Apple. Until he ate from the apple, it was not bad. When he ate, concept obviously was there. You're going to eat, you're going to die.
You die, right.
Once
Hashem
he ate it, he activated the thing. But it's not the Hashem who created it. It's that he's eating that apple that was activated, brought it into the world.
So it's you're asking a question.
No, I think that's how I understand it. There was a concept. He said, don't eat or you're going to die. But at this point, he was still was.
So all the evil, if anything, is man's fault, really. So why are we discussing any of this?
But
All of it, it was man-made.
yeah, but there's no problem. So there's we see the concept was there, but until he actually ate it, was only a concept. But once he ate it, the concept became actual thing. So what's the problem to have concept of evil and Hashem doing evil? It's not necessarily the same. So the fact that he has a concept, it doesn't mean it's going to cause the evil.
Right. So again, I hear a question. I don't hear any answers.
No, that's how I
I
understand
hear
it.
more questions. Yeah, I like the way you're explaining it, but I'm saying the Ramchal is not explaining it that way.
But that's how I understand it. You have to find someone what he's saying.
Because according, like you said, if it's so simple, the Ramchal doesn't need
Yeah.
20 pages over here of
Yes,
like this.
That's what I'm listening to. It seems simple to me. Like, is it like why he's
Right. So again, I'm with you that it could have been seemingly much simpler. Okay, fine. Okay, so yeah. Anyways, my point with respect to just what I want to say. So the pasuk says Yotzer or Uboirei Ra, right? The pasuk says Yotzer or Uboirei Ra, and the Ramchal then tells us that Boirei Ra is actually fitting because Boirei does not mean what you think it means, creating. Boirei means creating the possibility of it.
okay?
Right? That's
Fine.
what he says. Right? Which is again, I would have said, if you would have said, because the Ramchal says there was these words. The Ramchal says, Boirei Raksi, Veloy Oisei Ra. Right? It says Boirei Ra, but not Oisei Ra. In other words, if it would have said Oisei Ra, wow, that would have been really, really mixed and would make no sense.
Yeah.
But Boirei, so again, if you ask a regular person, what do you think is more complicated in the picture? Hashem creating evil or Hashem doing evil? So I would have said creating evil is much more severe because you're creating evil and you're making it to existence. Once it's in existence, okay, so Hashem carries it out. Okay, I don't have a problem. Ramchal says no. Boirei Ra is no problem because Boirei Ra does not mean what it means. It doesn't mean creating evil. Hashem can't create evil. He doesn't do evil, doesn't create evil, doesn't do anything. It's Boirei Ra means he creates the possibility of evil, and he does that by plugging the hashpah, right? So since everything that he created is behashpah, is an emanation, so the way to create evil is by not emitting all of the emanation that you want to emit, and that creates the possibility of Ra. Okay, and by this ability, I don't know what it means. Does possibility also mean potential? Right? Why am I saying this? Because later he's going to talk about, in a few paragraphs, going to discuss potential versus actuality. Right?
Yeah.
So, and that's a separate discussion. Meaning now, we'll see in a second. But is that the same discussion, just using different words, or there is then a separate element of this process that's called potential versus actuality? Okay. Again, there's a lot of moving parts that we're going to have to glue together somehow. But yeah,
No, I'm still.
and it's still.
Like light. Hashem created light, but He created the world and He maintains the world. There is a possibility if He stopped maintaining the world, going to disappear. So there is a possibility. So
Right.
every time He creates something, He created the possibility that He will stop maintaining that thing and it will disappear, and that's it. So when creating anything, He automatically creates possibility of not having
Nothing.
not having that thing, whatever it is.
Right.
So why it's so complicated?
I'm not sure, but I'm not sure what you're saying. Is the possibility of not having that thing is evil?
Look, there's the same. Look, okay, He creates good, and also He creates and He maintains everything. That's the whole idea. It's not like He just created world and let it run. Because of him, everything's keep running. He's constantly maintaining it. So there is a possibility that if he decided not to maintain the thing, that good will disappear. Like he created good, it's only here because he maintains it good. If he stops maintaining good, it will disappear. So it's going to be an opposite bad.
Well, okay. I mean, I'm not sure. That's I'm trying to figure out if the absence of good is bad, or is there's something else. Meaning, yet I'm still figuring out, right? I mean, that's the other chiddush that he told us, that evil is just absence of good, right? Which to me is still a big chiddush, because when a volcano erupts and buries little children under the rubble in pain, I'm not sure if that's to me is just absence of good, and you have to explain to me who did that. I'm going to say God, probably, right? So God, oisera, does evil. And that's not just absence of good, that's very, very active act of evil. Or certainly...
But I think we're looking at a picture like from a middle or something, like a missing beginning or something. It's just, we're looking at final result and trying to judge with a final result. It's like final act or something. Everything's all...
Perhaps, I'm not sure.
There's a famous
So,
drash of Moshe, like saying, why are you killing all those boys? He said, okay, save this one, this will not happen. So, like, you got to look at a much bigger picture that we're never going to get. I know it sounds like very bad.
I mean, I'm not sure. So then the Shomas doesn't, so the Shoma doesn't understand how you could possibly create evil creations out of absence of light, right? If darkness, I think darkness and light is a good marshal, right? Lightness represents hashpo of goodness, and darkness represents of absence of that light, right? Darkness is itself and is not evil, but once Hashem creates darkness, he creates the possibility of evil. And then he told us this idea, which I still don't fully understand, that through the second level of creation, the darkness then somehow creates actual evil in existence.
Yeah.
And that evil, as far as I understand, once it comes into existence, then Hashem lets it follow a certain course of nature. Let's put it that way. It has its own laws of nature and it follows its own laws of nature. And then the question is, how far does it go? Right? And that's where the neshama says, right? So okay, I understand how it comes to be. How far can this evil, run its course? Right? So again, my understanding is that, at the end of the day, Hashem created this machine, which is the universe, which he planned every possibility of everything that can exist and can potentially turn out, and it's a dynamic thing, but it's at the same time it's also static in the sense that everything is mostly figured out, right? In the Machlokes Rishonim, how far, meaning how far does Hashem get involved to override it? But at the end of the day, even according to the Rishonim, that Hashem overrides it, but it's still an override, meaning there is already a program in place with all the if-thens already set up, right? And if the volcano is going to erupt and the child is going to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, okay, that's a domino effect of whatever could be. How it all works out, that child deserved it, I don't know. I can't imagine. I'm not sure. I don't know.
I don't know. I think that's too simplifying stuff. Okay, so Hashem made the world on the principle of din, like mishpat.
Mishpat.
So to have a court, you have somebody who will bring good thing, a bad thing. So you don't use Satan to bring bad thing, because the only way to judge something, you have to wait.
Persecution. Okay.
Good and bad.
Right.
So you don't use Satan. He created Satan to be the bad guy and like whatever. So once he created, then he does whatever he does under control. So maybe that's how I understand it. The Satan who was needed to be created for a mishpat. For
Okay,
a
to
din,
me, the
for
Satan is just personification of the forces
Yeah.
of evil that exist in the world. But it's just personification.
But originally,
The rest of it, to me, it's more like chemistry.
But the passport that originally was created because he needed to run court, he needed prosecute, accuser, and defender. So you had to have accuser.
Again, to me, the whole concept of a court is just another, is also a personification of.
Yeah, but you're talking about a second stage. I'm talking about the creation, like original, like why evil was created. It wasn't created as evil. It was created as like representative, or like who gonna represent all bad is gonna happen, all good gonna happen. So, but once Satan was created, then he does whatever he does, and that's how I understand it.
I'm still confused about it. Again, the child on Mount Vesuvius. What's happening to that child?
Well, Jed does, but
Did he die because he sinned?
not necessarily.
So there's an innocent child dying.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So let's say
Is this against or
let's
with the Ratzon of Hashem or against the Ratzon of Hashem?
I think at this point, the Satan bring his case to Hashem. Okay, that's the evil, it's the good, like a song Gomorrah. The waiting, like what's good. If Satan wins the case, like, we have the concept of sometimes punishment is not individual. Sometimes it's like whole nation, some area.
Right, I'm saying Lloyd had to escape.
So,
otherwise, he would be consumed by the city.
Basically, what happens is a heavenly decision based on for that area, based on the Satan happened to have better case than whatever the defender was, better argument. But at the end, the Satan is the one who brings it up. He's the one who argues the case. He's the one.
Again, I don't think that in my mind there is no actual Satan machlekes.
Again,
but it's a personification,
I know,
an ability to express certain ideas more than that. But to me, it's mostly chemical. Yeah. It's a chemical reaction. That's what I think.
No, I'm just trying to simplify like an example how things may happen. Like it's not like a real cortex. I'm not thinking of this. It's just concept. Like forces of they're not. I don't call them forces of evil because when they were created, they were there as a concept to represent whatever it's going to be and what not going to be.
Right.
But the ones that were created, they're doing what they're doing. Besides what.
But you're the reason why you want to use the Satan as a model is because it allows you freedom. That sometimes the Satan wins and sometimes the Satan loses.
Yes, so but based on
being as opposed to a chemical reaction, which is the way I'm looking at
Yeah.
it works the same way every time.
But okay,
right? Based on certain conditions
yeah,
that of laws of nature, right? If you add this much hydrogen and this much oxygen, you're going to create this result.
Okay.
If you change the formula, you're going to change a different result. Right?
Okay.
It's not a social process where today you're in a good mood and it's going to create water. Tomorrow you're in a bad mood, it's going to create oil. Right? It's not a moody thing. It's a
okay.
Right. So I'm saying I think the only reason why you need the whole concept of a Satan, why it helps you, is because you're saying sometimes Satan has more power and he wins. Okay, since there are terrible consequences as a result, and sometimes he has less power and it's all good. Right, but I'm just saying that.
Okay.
No, I'm saying that's what you need.
That's pretty much what I'm saying. Yeah.
But my problem with that is again that it's like Satan has no freedom. Again, it's just a personification.
Yeah, but
replace Satan with Hashem, and it's the same concept.
At the end, it's
like we say, Satan is a malach, right? It's just a messenger of Hashem.
But at the end, there's a heavenly court. There's that ruling based like let's look at our court and our land. Like, there's a rule. If you did something, there's a law. You have to. There's the same law for everybody else. If you prove the case, there is a punishment, a set punishment. If you didn't laws, it didn't happen. So it is all the same. It just this time just kicks in, sometimes it does not kick in. It depends.
Depends on the
Situation.
particulars of the case. Okay, could be.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on. Let's just move on. So now, okay. Okay. Then so now this is where we're up to. I think we're up to somewhere in the middle of this Kuf Tezayin, maybe even further.
No. No.
Kuf Yud Ches.
So we're in the middle of Kuf Yud Ches already. Wow. So in Kuf Tezayin, he told us that this is where he introduced this concept of B'koyach versus B'poil, right? The potential versus actuality. Okay. Now, why does he need to tell us this? What does he need to tell us of this potentiality versus actuality? Is this a new idea, or is this a restatement of this old idea? In other words, again, he told us that evil is created into two stages. One stage is hashpah, absence hashpah, which creates the possibility of evil, versus then second creation, which creates the actual evil, right? Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now he tells us, introduces the concept of b'koyach, potential, and b'poil, which means actuality. So simply speaking, you could say that b'koyach, the creation of the b'koyach, is the first stage of creation that creates evil in potential. And b'poil is the second stage of creation where actual evil is created. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the commentator, Rabbi Friedlander over here, seems to say. Right? He's just going to read. He says, Kavanas ha'agdama, the intent of this introduction, Kivan shon oiskim lalam b'shroshe abriya, since we're discussing the roots of creation, ha'bekoyach shelo, which is the potential of it, v'gama shehuzbar le'el al briyas darkei ha'tov v'hara, and this is what was explained before regarding the creation of good and evil, ne'amar al chukeihem, ha'teva shalom, which is their nature, hainu ha'bekoyach, that's the potential, v'loi al ha'bepoil, but it's not in the actuality, which is ha'ishim, which is the participants, the individuals within creations, right? The way Ramchal said before, the two stages, that the beginning sets up the architecture. The first step is setting up the architecture, which is, again, hashpah and absence of hashpah. And then the second is setting up the kalim, like building the Mishkan. First build the Mishkan, then you put in the kalim, right? So first you create the universe and its laws, and then you populate it. So those are the two stations. Over here, when he's talking about b'koyach, potential, and b'poil, in actuality, again, it's the architecture and the population.
Mm-hmm.
And the population. It's the same thing. I don't personally see it as the same thing. I don't personally see it as the same thing. I see that there is something else that is introducing a new layer of in the creative process, again, called the potential versus actuality. But I don't really know why he needs to introduce this new layer. I don't, because in the end, he says, in the end of that paragraph, he says the following line. He says, so Bereshis Nami Maimarhu, right? He says that Bereshis is also is one of the creative statements. It's different from all other creative statements. Because in it, the entire world is included in its potential. Before it goes into actuality. V'amnam, however, b'chodsho es hateva b'koyach, when Hashem innovates the nature in its potential, oz nasu kol ha'inyonim ha'elu shezacharnu b'hashpah. Then all of the things that we are talking about can be made through hashpah. V'achar kach yotze hakol l'poil, and then afterwards everything goes through into actuality, k'mo shehuchan b'koyach, as it was already set up. In other words, it seems to me he's saying something else. He's saying that in order for hashpah, the hashpah architecture to take place, you first have to create the potential of everything to exist. So it's again, I'm not sure why he still needs it. What's your...
Actually, I think about a different thing. Okay, so let's say Hashem creates world. He creates forces of evil, forces of good, whatever. But there is no people. So those forces of evil have nothing to do.
Right.
Once you put people in, the forces you were saying doing stuff. So Hashem not doing bad. The forces of evil do. When he made them, they had nothing to do. So they were not evil really. They were created as potential. Because there was nothing, nobody to affect. There was nothing but potential. No people yet.
Okay.
Once you put people in, those potentials became reality.
Okay, but it's interesting. It's interesting. But I think I think he comes back to that hashpah as well. Not just that the possibility of the hashpah architecture that he sets up can only exist if the bekoyach is created. I'm not sure why. Okay, we'll come back to that in a second. Maybe we're getting some clarity here. Then we come next paragraph. He says, "V'yidiyacha oid inyan omuk b'dover zeh," and that's see that. He says, "I'll tell you another deep thing in this regard." Right. So again, why does he need? Let me ask you a question. Why does the Ramchal need to tell us that what he's about to tell us is a deep thing? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, everything in this book is a deep thing. So what is the Ramchal trying to tell us by letting us know? Let me tell you something deep regarding this matter. Okay, keep that question on the side. Okay, v'hu klal mitzius ha'olam b'chol zmanav, and this is the general kind of description of the creation of the world in all its time. Okay, b'chol zmanav, right? So in other words, this concept applies to the world in all of its time.
Okay.
Kishoyrish hakol, because the root of everything, hu she'odam baruch hu chofetz v'rotze lahashpiya mituvoy el hanimtzoim she'rotze lahamtzi. That the source of it all is that Hashem wants to lahashpiya, to emanate from His goodness to all of the creations that He wants to create. Okay, all right. V'chidush al kein mitzius ha'ora v'hashpo mimenu yisborach, and therefore He created the possibility of ha'ora, of illumination and hashpo that comes from Him. And it's set up in such a way that it could be fitting to the creations that He wants to create. Right? So again, what it sounds to me like is that He first has to create the potential to create the potential, perhaps, and meaning not the potential, but the potential, meaning He creates the drive to be mashpia in the first place. That's what He's saying. I'm not sure. Because He wants to be mashpia, He creates the want to be mashpia. Like, and it never, I don't know. All right. So again, this to me sounds like a new concept here at all. There's a new concept, but it's at the same time it's an old concept. The old concept is Hashem wants to do good. That's the whole point of His creation. He wants to share His goodness, right? But for Him to be able to share His goodness, so to speak, He has to create the hashpah that allows Him to share His goodness. Okay? it's more than, meaning, I'm not sure, but, and that hashpah is pure kedusha. That hashpah, that hashpah to share hashpah, that hashpah is pure kedusha, and then that hashpah becomes. Then he says that hashpah has to be, what's the word? Brought down in order for it to exist in the physical world, so to speak. Right? The hashpah has to be brought down in order to exist in the physical world. So again, go back to that question. Is this something new? Or again, this is the restatement of the old architecture of that Hashem created hashpah and absence of hashpah. Is this something new he's creating? He's explaining to us what he calls over here now. He calls these things called levushim. That Hashem dressed up this hashpah in various layers to make it more physical, let's call it. So is this the same thing as he said before, that there is a downgrade of to me it sounds different. It's a new concept that he's addressing. But again, the architecture of creation, not necessarily that has to do with good and evil. The problem again, I come back to Rabbi Friedlander back here, and he seems to be saying that this absence of hashpah in the levushim is the same idea. So I don't know. Anyways, then he says, "V'hinei kol zman avodas ha'odam," the entire time of service, right, which is the 6,000 years, right? Hashpah mislabeshes b'levushim eila. So this hashpah is clothed with these layers. U'bechloi zman ha'avoda, and then when the 6,000 ends, tispashit gam him in the levushim, then that hashpah also gets purified. Okay, and then he says, so then what comes out, right, because he told us before, right, that this whole big idea of Ramchal before that we learned, that we thought we understood, was that the ultimate rectification, which is the revelation of good, comes from within the evil, from within the darkness, right, from within the Hester, from within the concealment. Hashem figures out how to build out the revelation, right? It's not that, okay, Hashem says, okay, 6,000 years is concealment, and the new beginning starts from fresh. No, it's from within the 6,000 years of concealment, Hashem brings out the revelation, right? That's the system that Hashem set up, right? So now he's going back to that concept, and he's explaining it in a new idea. The new idea is that there is hashpah. The hashpah is covered with levushim, and then those levushim are removed, and that's how the hashpah, which is always there in hiding, which is told us before, right, is removes its levushim and is revealed. Correct?
Okay.
That's what he's comes back to that essential idea. He says, So even the transformation of the different times of the world is the ways of hashpah. That Hashem changes hashpah, elevates hashpah from in different layers until it's fully revealed. Then everything that Hashem creates is going to be kodesh kadoshim. Okay, so Klal Shel Davar. I'm just going to read this. Klal Shel Davar. So summary of this thing is Chidosh Ha'odem Baruch Hu Hashpah Mimenu Ela Nimtzoim. Hashem was mechadesh a hashpah from him to his creations. Shetoich Yesinyana Ela Eina Ela Hemshech Hakedush Mimenu. And the whole essence of that hashpah is the emanation of his kedusha to his creations. Again, to me, my understanding is that this hashpah is the hashpah of hashpah. This hashpah creates the possibility of hashpahs. That's the purpose of this hashpah. Hashpah says Hashem wants to be mashpia to his creations. So this hashpah is the creation of the possibility. That's why he talks about the bekoyach in this section, right? Hashem creates the possibility of possibility, or the possibility of hashpah.
Yeah, but one sense, there's always possibility.
Right, and that's part of the infinity of creation, that we don't really understand how this works, because it is the infinite. That's the point. That we don't know where that beginning is. Right? Beginning of Hashem's creation is way beyond us, but it's an infinite loop that says there's always this creation of possibility.
Yeah.
That's my hunch right now, that's what he's referring to. That's why this is so deep. Again, this is why he tells us this is deep, because he's now really expressing the very, like he said before, the shoirish, right? The shoirish of this creation. So if he's referring to the shoirish of something, that's going to be deep. There's no other way to look at it. So Hashem created this possibility of this hashpah. And then he created ways, different roads for the hashpah, which are lower in related to this the holiness, the potential for holiness. Now this sentence I don't know how to read. Again, maybe the translation can help me. This is the right paragraph before 117, right? Before 117, he says, "V'chidesh b'hashpo atzma habitulim v'kilkul hasidorim shezacharti." Well, how do you read that sentence? Where's 117?
Here's 117.
Where's 117? Right, so it's going to be right before that.
Oh, okay.
Right before that. Yeah, so over here. This sentence over here. V'chidesh b'hashpah. What does that sentence say in the English? What does it say?
Not yet. I'm confused.
Is there a word nullification there?
The use of concealment process cause. In English, what's the here? You brought about damage and destruction within the actual system of emanation described above. Word 1.
Right, okay. Damage and destruction. Okay. So they translate the word bittul, which literally usually translated nullification. They're calling it as destruction. Well, I'm still not sure. May I? For a second. So, it's saying over here, this is the general idea. God brought forth an emanation from himself to his created beings. In essence, this emanation is simply an extension of his own holiness that he transmits to these created beings. He then imposed upon this emanation certain modes of operation that were lowly and demeaning for it, relative to its true level of holiness. This brought about damage and destruction I mean, that's not what it says, but okay. But this brought about, in other words, it's the same thing. The imposition of lower levels of these levushim, the imposition of these levushim brought about damage and destruction within the actual system of emanation as described above. Okay? So again, this is not how I read it. I don't know anything about it, but this is not how I read it. They're saying, which is similar to Rabbi Friedlander's. Maybe I'm completely off. I don't know. All this is a consequence of the process of revelation of God's oneness that I mentioned earlier. All of this is a process. Again, what does it say here? But totally called Zebin Gilu Hayichud, right? That's true, right? That's all this comes to the process of revelation of God's oneness, which is we discussed in the beginning of the book, right? The initial concealment of God's presence required by this process causes all these things to happen within the system of divine emanation. As in Hebrew, Shemitzad Hester Aponim Mischat Shem Kol Advorim Ha'ele B'choik Hashpa'osoi, right? From Hashem's concealment of His face, that's how we create these. That's how these things came to be. Umitzad Hagilui, and then the later revelation came Mispashtim Kol Levushim Ha'elu Imenu. Then all of the levushim are removed. He says we're going to speak about this later, and they say that's 118, which is 118. Okay. I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to read a little more. Again, just the last paragraph. It's probably very late. At this stage of our discussion, we need to focus on the following point. God's decree caused many innovations within the divine emanation itself. Okay. Yeah, that's not how I read it either. Okay. I was going to, because, behashpo could be translated in two ways. With hashpo or in the hashpo, right? So I read it as with the hashpo. But okay. At this stage, our discussion, we need to focus on the following point. God's decree caused many innovations within the divine emanation itself. These innovations are the principal cause of everything that subsequently exists in the world. It was only after all these preparatory actions that God made this lowly world, constructed on the basis of all these preparations, a combination of all these different processes. All this brought the world into existence in such a way that it would progress from stage to stage. I don't know what just was said. But the Neshama likes it because the Neshama says, be'emes hagdoma zois ikris me'od. This is a very fundamental hagdoma. But fundamental to what? For what? We must understand, right? Why is it so ikris? So from Makil Das, kol ha'achonois harabois, all the different layers of preparations that were necessary in order to bring about the existence of this world. Because the nature of this world is not complete after all these layers of creation. Okay, so we see that, again, to me, just from reading from the Neshama's response, right? The Neshama says, wow, this is a whole very you just create a very complicated architecture. So to me, it sounds like this, because there's different things that he's talking about. There's a system of levushim, perhaps. There's a system of bekoach and bepoil, and there's a system of hashpo and absence of hashpo. And all of these three are separate systems that are coming together to play. I don't know exactly how they work, but the way the English is reading here, and again, the way Rabbi Friedlander is reading, it's all one system. Which I'm not sure. Again, my reading doesn't make sense either, so I don't know. But neither is theirs. Okay, so to summarize, what we know, what we don't know. I don't know. What we don't know, what I don't know is what was the need for all of this very complicated architecture. That's what I don't know. In the beginning, I understood, that the existence of evil is difficult to understand, and Hashem can't emanate evil. Okay, so that we came to terms with, even though I didn't understand that so well either. But I came to terms with some of it. But the rest of it, I don't understand. What I don't understand is...
That's why it's a little bit deep, just for your information only.
All right. The root of this existence, why this was necessary here. Why was that necessary? Why was that necessary? Why was that necessary? And I don't understand the whole B'koychem B'poil business. Meaning, the Friedlander says that it was most like a Kemuna thing. Don't think that Hashem, like he said, don't make the mistake of other people that a universe existed forever. But I don't think, it's not a side point. To me, everything that Ramchal brings, he brings it because it's necessary for the point that it's trying to make. So I'm not sure what necessitated that point. I'm not sure what necessitated that point. So, right. So what I do know is that somehow all of this is going to, which we didn't get to today, is going to create a boundary for evil. Right? That evil is going to exist within a certain framework, right? Because this architecture is going to then give us a clear boundary where evil is and where evil isn't, right? Because he's going to say evil isn't, because it's oimidli his battle, it's supposed to be destroyed in the future, and he's also going to say that it's going to have to be isolated. We already discussed this last time, because evil in itself is a self-destructive mechanism. So we didn't get to that part today yet. So somehow this architecture is going to help us understand the limitations of evil. But I'm not sure, I don't fully understand the architecture, so I don't know how it's going to all play out.